Hi, my name is Matt Kazmar, and I'm a Customer Solutions Architect at Aviatrix. Thank you for checking out my video on the Aviatrix Sandbox deployment. This tool will enable you to deploy Aviatrix Transit in both AWS and Azure and demonstrate seamless connectivity between the two. The easiest way to get started is to go to aviatrix.com and then simply click the Multi-Cloud Network Sandbox Starter tool on the front page. In this video, I'll be walking you through this entire process, including spinning up connectivity in AWS and in Azure, and demonstrating that connectivity indeed does work with minimal effort on my part. Without further ado, let's start on the prerequisites. In this section, we want to collect the AWS Access Key ID and Secret Access Key. This is analogous to the Azure App Registration, the application ID, and then a secret. So to collect this information, we have to sign into the AWS console. If you don't have an AWS account, create the account down there by clicking Create a new AWS account. Otherwise, just go ahead and sign in with your credentials. Once you're into the AWS Management Console, go to the upper right corner and click your account name, and then go to My Security Credentials. Now, your security credentials are here, and you have this concept of access keys. Where it differs from the Azure method is that this is actually tied to you as opposed to being a global construct in the Azure Active Directory. So any actions taken with this key will be attributed to you rather than the service principal. So to create this, you want to create a new access key. And it says, it's been created successfully. So you can either download the key file or simply click here and copy and paste this information someplace safe. Then click close and you're done. If you ever need to delete them, you just click delete and go through the workflow. The next thing we want to do in the AWS console is generate a key pair for our test VMs that live in Ohio. To do so, we got to go to Services and then Compute EC2. Once you're in the EC2 screen, go over to the upper right corner and verify that you're in the Ohio region. I'm already in the Ohio region, but if you're not, just click that and click the Ohio region and you'll be good to go. Now, once that's done, go over to key pairs in the lower left corner here. I already have several key pairs generated. However, we'll want to create a new one for this exercise. So go up to the upper right corner and click Create Key Pair. Type a name for your key pair. Choose the file format, OpenSSH or PuTTY. So pick appropriate and click Create Key Pair. Notice that in the lower left corner there, if you're using Chrome, that the file is downloaded automatically. This is the file you're going to want to use when you connect to your test instances that will spin up later. Now, you might be wondering why we need to create a key pair for AWS. The reason being is that AWS only allows the use of these key pairs to authenticate to Linux distributions. It's similar to Azure. If you go to create a virtual machine, you can specify a public key source, basically the same idea. Azure is just a touch more flexible in that it allows you to specify a password. The last thing we want to do before we get into the Docker deployment and the actual setting up of the gateways and instances is to subscribe to the Aviatrix offering. To do so, go up to the search bar and simply type Aviatrix. Click on the offering called Aviatrix Secure Networking Platform Metered, 24/7 support. Click Continue to subscribe. And here are your terms. Click Accept Terms. and then you can choose I'll do this later. After a few moments, you'll see the effective date and expiration date change to NA and NA. You really don't have to wait for this, and you can continue on to the next section, but I just wanted to show what it looks like when it's all done. Now, for the Azure portion, we want to go to portal.azure.com and go to the Azure Active Directory. On the Azure Active Directory page, click on App Registrations. In App Registrations, click New Registration. Type a name for your application. I'd recommend creating something that the Azure AD admins at your organization can tie back to you so they know who to come after. We can leave the rest of these as the defaults. Click Register. Now, once you're into the screen here, you'll see an application client ID. You'll need to note this down, so copy and paste that to someplace useful. Same thing with the directory ID here, also called tenant ID. Once you have those collected, go over to certificates and secrets, and we're going to create a new client secret. You can name this whatever you like, and set an expiration date, then click Add. All right, now that you have a secret created, you want to mark down this value here and put that someplace safe. You'll definitely need to keep this secure because this can do whatever rights you assign to the application ID. Also note that if you navigate away from the page, this value will become hidden and you will never be able to find it again. There's one last item in Azure that we have to do to enable the Aviatrix controller to deploy resources within a given Azure subscription. Navigate to the subscription you intend to use and then click on the Access Control item and then click Add Role Assignments. I like to give the Aviatrix account the contributor role for demo purposes. It makes things easy. Everything there is needed. You may choose something different for production use. And then pick the service principal that you created earlier here. So I use Matt's Lab ID 2. It's down there. Click Save. All right, that's done. On to Docker. Next, we need to install Docker on our Windows workstation. Easiest way to do that, go to docker.com, click Get Started, and then click the Download for Windows, and then click to install. It'll pop up the user account control window, which I'm not recording. You can click Yes, leave all of these checked, and then click OK. Since the Hyper-V role is required, I'll probably have to reboot here, just fair warning. All right, Docker's installed, so I need to close and restart. I'll be right back. When I restarted, I was prompted with this message here that the WSL2 installation is incomplete. So I clicked on this link, which took me to this page that's behind the window. So I'm going to download this kernel package here and install it. I'll probably have to reboot again. All right, there we go. Let's click next a couple times. UAC pop up again. All right, finish. And I'm going to click restart. Be right back. Okay, I guess our restart didn't actually restart the computer. It just restarted Docker. So now we can see that Docker is actually running. Next, I'll show you exactly how to use Docker to get our containers started so we can do the Aviatrix deploy. All right, now to actually install the Docker container, we want to go back to the Aviatrix community and find the Sandbox. It'll give us the commands we need. So just type in Sandbox and pick the top one here. And scroll down to where it says the Docker commands right there. Launch web-based UI. So what we're going to do is go over to a PowerShell window here and run these commands. going to let Docker do its thing and find the image, downloading everything. Now, after installing that, I did get a pop-up that said Docker Desktop Backend. So I'm just going to allow it to communicate on everything just to keep things simple. Now that it's all done, you might be tempted to click this link here. However, Windows doesn't really like that. The easiest way to go is just open a new tab, go to localhost :5000, and there you go. We're going to start out with the Aviatrix Sandbox Starter in standard mode. So just click Done here. And we're going to create this topology up here as you see it. All right, let's get started with deploying the Aviatrix platform. So I'm going to just do some copying and pasting here so we can get our controllers spun up. All right, at this point you have to enter your email address, and this is the password you'll use to log into your controller. So either I could generate one with LastPass here, or I could just make something up, and I'll just make something up here. All right, now the controller is actually launching with a pretty big Terraform script. Let's take a look at the debug here. If you're watching the debug, at some point you'll see this waiting 5 minutes for a controller to come up. So the controller is just your typical EC2 VM, so it's going to take a few minutes to actually provision and come up once all the resources are actually generated. So we'll just wait here until it declares it done. After many minutes, the controller is fully deployed. Now we can actually launch the Aviatrix transit gateways in AWS. You can see the controller launched successfully. So we'll just click yes here. This will take a few more minutes, of course, more Terraform. The reason why we generated a key pair was for these test EC2 instances. So click yes, and the name of my key pair, I will copy and paste that. And now it'll launch those EC2 instances. So this will again take several minutes. You can look at debug if you're so inclined. Otherwise, just be patient, go get coffee, and we'll be right back. It's worth noting that the key pair name does not take spaces. I created a key pair name with spaces, so I'm going to go behind the scenes and just create a new key pair for myself here, and we'll try this again. All right, I'm going to replace this key pair with a better name, and let's see how that goes. All right, our EC2 test instances have been launched. Next thing to do is launch the Aviatrix Transit in Azure. So here's where we have to put all of our details. I'm just going to copy and paste some details here, and then we're clicking continue. Click yes to complete the Azure to AWS transit pairing. So all right, this tool has completed. Now we have private IPs of the two test VMs, then public IPs of the two test VMs. Note that these are both within AWS. If you want to spin up Azure VMs, you'll need to do that for yourself, as the tool currently doesn't do that. If you actually go look at the virtual networks created, though, we have our transit and then the two spokes. So if you go ahead and create a VM within one of these, either the public or private here, not the gateway subnet, you'll actually be able to connect from a VM in this spoke to one of the VMs in one of those two spokes. So I'll demonstrate that shortly after I spin up an Azure VM. Before we get into testing out the connectivity between the spokes, I'd like to just show you very briefly the Aviatrix controller. It's a full GUI interface that you can do quite a bit with. Log in with the username of admin, and the password is the one you created during the Sandbox setup process. Click sign in. Now we can see here on the dashboard, this is always kind of fun. It shows you the map of where everything is. I have transit in East US 2 in AWS, which is Ohio, and then East US, which is near Washington, D.C. So we get to see that. So that's kind of fun. Additionally, there's other features in here that are beyond the scope of a mere deployment video. However, they're all there for you, and perhaps a subject of a future video. Now on to the testing. All right, last thing we want to do before we actually destroy this is demonstrate that we can actually connect between these various test VMs. On the left here, this guy is living in Azure. It has this IP. This guy is living in EC2 in one of the spokes. It has that IP there. Note that it's the same as that IP down there. And likewise for that one. So we have two VMs that live in EC2 and one VM that lives in Azure. So let's try pinging from Azure to the other two VMs. So we're getting a response there. Let's try the other VM. All right, so both VMs are reachable. So just for fun, let's see if we can SSH to one of them. Won't be able to log in because I don't have the EC2 key pair loaded on the Azure VM. We can still look at it. So it's prompting. So we're actually making an SSH connection. All right, let's do the same kind of test from over on the EC2 side. Let's first ping that Azure VM. 10.101.16.4. So it is replying. Now let's see, we should be able to SSH to this one just because it is using a password. So we are logged into my Ubuntu machine that is over in Azure in East US. And we can try from the other spoke too, just for fun. Same thing. And we can also ping this other VM that's in EC2 here and SSH to it. Although same issue with the key pair. The last thing to do when you're done with the Sandbox environment is to destroy it so you don't continue to be charged. You'll want to just come up here in this, still the configuration window, and click destroy. It'll prompt you if you want to actually destroy the environment. I'm not actually done, so I'm not going to click OK. However, if you click OK, a few Terraform destroys will be run and everything created will be gone. The only exceptions are going to be the Azure VM if you spun one up for Azure testing as I did. So you'll want to make sure you actually delete that too so you're not charged. Thank you for watching and hope to create more videos in the future.